I'm a bulldog.
Hello, Dog Nation, and welcome into Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Dog Nation recruiting insider Jeff Sentell. Jeff, the Dogs beat Texas last week. Georgia may have lost Jared Curtis, but they gained Elijah Griffin. Where do we even start?
Now, Kaylee, I gotta do this. Now, we've never done this before. I've got to break precedent. There's something that we did in last week's show that I think we need to go back and talk about.
Why would we go back on last week? This is a new week.
Kaylee.
What are you about to do? What are you Oh my gosh, okay guys, just like the refs in last week's game versus Texas, we're going to have to go back on something that we put in place.
We got a water bottle on the field here right now. That means it's magical do-overs.
I guess so. I mean, if we learned anything from last week, it's that you can throw a few water bottles and reverse the outcome of something. But look.
Kaylee, upon further review, I think we got to talk about, with no disrespect to the Curtis name, the Curtis family, his wonderful horse named Bomb that we also love, we got to talk about the Dog of the Week. We might need to edit, we might need to rewind the pages of history and talk about our Dog of the Week. How do you feel about last week's Dog of the Week now?
You know, the thing is you can't take away from the performance that he had because that was undeniable. But now he's no longer a dog, so he can't be Dog of the Week. And we actually went back and forth last week on who we thought the Dog of the Week should be. So in light of recent events, it only feels appropriate that we maybe give it to someone else.
You know, sometimes the universe kind of does the right thing, and I think the universe was telling us with that great viral run from Usman Kroma, it was like, hey, guys, don't make it so hard. This is one of the best runs you'll ever see. Because of that, because of the decision by Mr. Curtis to reopen his recruiting, but no, because of the powers of the mystical, magical water bottle, we are going back 88 miles per hour in time in our DeLorean like Back to the Future, and we are changing the past. And last week's Dog of the Week is actually Usman Kroma.
And now our Dog of the Week is going to be Usman Kroma, who actually had a real viral play. Like, this is everywhere. So, like you said, the universe works in mysterious ways, and it had a funny way of telling us that, hey, we made the wrong decision last week, but that's okay because on our show we have the ability to change it.
Because of the magical water bottle. Hey, drop something in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, or you're like, come on, man, let it stand? Did you laugh about the water bottle joke? We're breaking the fourth wall here. Let us know in the comments.
So we will talk about the Jared Curtis decommitment here in just a little bit. We've got some other things to talk about. First, here's what we've got going on today's Before the Hedges rundown. Justus Terry, the 5-star defensive lineman out of Manchester, did visit Texas. Jeff was able to sit down, get an update on where things stand with him and the Dogs. Then we add another dog to the list, the 5-star defensive lineman Elijah Griffin, the #1 player out of the state of Georgia. We're going to break it all down for you, and then we will address the Curtis decommitment, what that means for the Dogs, who's next up for that quarterback spot in the 2026 class. But start with Justus Terry. I got to give you your flowers here. It was such a quick turnaround for you to get this conversation with him. So I'll give you some snaps because if I clap, I'm going to lose all my papers. But let's take a look and see where things stand with the 5-star defensive lineman Justus Terry after his visit to Texas on Saturday.
What was your big takeaway from the official at Texas? I know Texas wasn't a team that was on your radar, but they must have jumped on your radar.
Yes, sir. You know, they've been coming hard lately. They told me I'm a top priority guy for them, so I just been, taking everything in, exploring my options.
What was it like watching Georgia, though? I mean, you had to look at that schedule and say, let me go see them play the Dogs.
Yes,
I mean, that was a good test for them, right?
Yes, sir. It was a good game to go to, with Texas being #1 and Georgia being #5. It was a great match to watch. And, the Dogs put on the show, seeing the D linemen get rotated in and out, a bigs group, a pass rushing group. I could see it. I can see the future in Georgia.
Now, I was looking for you. I found you in the crowd. You look like you were smiling a little bit watching the Dogs eat a little bit in that first half. I mean,
yes, sir. It was a great game.
You know those boys, that staff. I mean, it's okay to smile. I mean, what was that like watching them go off a little bit?
Man, it was good. Just seeing how them boys have fun. Jalen Walker, Michael, Warren, all the people in the trenches were just, connecting, eating together, and that's what I like to see.
Did anybody get at you after the game? Did any coaches from Georgia get at you during the game? I mean, what was that like?
I just seen Coach Coot Coach Coop, you know, he was pointing at me, and you know, it was all jokes, just laughing at each other.
Wow, that's pretty funny. I think I saw Coop and Quavo trying to find you in the stands or
Yes,
something
sir.
like that.
Yes, sir.
For you, I know it's still a marathon. I believe you at your word, unless you decide to pull an Elijah and say, nah, I'm done, I'm through with this stuff. What's the latest on that? Are you still taking that thing to December the 4th?
Yes, sir. I'm still taking it to December the 4th. I heard it was you could pick between December the 4th and the 6th. Is that true?
Yeah, you got any 3 days.
In the 3 days. So I think I might do it the 6th on the last day and just, you know, make it big and just, hey, bring everything home.
Justus, it wouldn't be a marathon if you didn't take it to the very last day, man.
You know I had to.
The Dawgs, how are they? Are you going to get back to Athens
Yes,
before
sir.
the season's over? What's the plan there?
For sure. I definitely catch another home game. I don't know which one yet, but, you know, they call me and say, come up, I'll come up anytime. So that would be no problem getting up there. Okay, so I'll probably make the Georgia Tech or the Tennessee game for sure.
What's the feeling still like there with the Dawgs? I mean, did you see him in Tuscaloosa? Did you get to see him in Tuscaloosa?
I didn't. You know, our game got moved to that Saturday, which caused me to run for homecoming king, and you know I had to stay back and win the crown. So I didn't make it. I couldn't make it.
You the homecoming king?
Yes, sir.
How'd that feel? Was that pretty cool?
It felt great. You know, just being in the city, knowing the school voted for me, and you know the fans was out that day. It was just a great feeling being with the guys, and you know. The king was just a side effect to it. You know, it really was just being with my guys on a senior night and homecoming night. So homecoming was just a side effect. It was really senior night, and I was just happy to be there.
Justus, it's kind of funny how it's come full circle. I remember you were the one telling Elijah to come join you at Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Now the script is flipped.
Yes,
Elijah's
sir.
the one now publicly telling you to come to Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Did he have any words for you? Did he have anything to say to you after he made his decision?
Yes, so I haven't heard from him yet, but I know it's coming. You know, me and E would connect real easily. You know, he can hit me anytime. I can hit him anytime. You know, our bond is there, so I'm looking forward to it.
He said after his commitment, he said, you know, he said the right things. I hope he does what's best for him. I hope he takes all the time he needs. But then he said he knows where home is. What do you think about that, man?
Man, you know, me and E, you know, it's all jokes. You know, we're gonna keep poking at each other for sure, and hopefully we end up on the same field playing together. But hey, it's whatever God take me. You know, I'm just, you know, walking the walk.
Justus, who's in it now, and who are you going to go see now before you make that decision on the 6th?
Yes, sir. I think I'll go visit Auburn for sure. Auburn versus Vanderbilt, Florida State versus Florida. You know, the rivalry game. I have to hit that one. And, you know, I'll be back in UGA. I'll look at the Tuscaloosa schedule and see if they have any home games. But if they do, I'll definitely try to get down there for sure. And Texas, you know, they're telling me to come back out there. And, you know, I'll try to get back out there also.
Justus, a lot of people think that Georgia, you know, obviously is a team that's always going to be there until the end for you.
Yes, sir.
But they also say Alabama might be the closest. Is that accurate? How do you look at it? Is it a bunch of schools? Is
Yes,
it
sir.
Alabama?
I'm open. I look at them all equal. You know, I'm just exploring my options. You know, I seen the thing where they said Georgia is 100% prediction. It was like, you know, it looks like that, but I look at them as like all equal. Like I can land anywhere. You know, at the end of the day, you know, coaches say they can develop you, which they can, but it's up to you to put in the work no matter where you go. So I just look forward to, you know, going to where I'm comfortable at, and you know, just put in the work, make myself better, develop myself.
Man, Justus Terry, man, I always appreciate the time. Always smiling, always
Yes,
full
sir.
of joy. I think they need to put a marathon finish line up on the stage when he announces his decision
Yes,
on
sir.
December the 6th. Justus, always appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Look at that smile on his face. He looks like he wants to tell you something so bad, but he's just having to like hold it in and choke it down till what looks like December 6th. But I will say, Justus Terry did cross my mind. Yesterday, I saw a video from some podcast, and they were talking about how the performance of the Georgia defensive line at the Texas game was elite, how Kirby had them so prepared, and that was the best they'd looked. For someone like Justus Terry, you have to look at that and say, like, I can totally see myself fitting into this here and seeing the success that they have. That's where I want to be.
Yeah. Kaylee, part of me thinks there's something I want to tell Dog Nation really bad, but maybe I just want to hold it in until December the 6th. There's an element or two out of that, out of the Terry story that we had to save that for the pages of DogNation.com. But he said that defensive line coach Travion Scott flipped him flipped him some graphics. And it just happened to be of Michael Williams being the co-defensive lineman of the week for the SEC. And Justus was telling me about that, and again, smiling, over the top, full of joy. He seemed pretty happy to get that text message. Obviously, he says he's going to get back to Georgia, probably for the Georgia Tech game or the Tennessee game. He said, I think we saw it in the clip, all they got to do is hit me, and I can come up there, no problem, no problem. And again, that's that home type feeling. And again, what he says, Dear Dog Nation, is he says that he's going to choose the school that feels most comfortable and most at home. And I did think it was funny because you saw him in the stands in Texas at DKR. See how the cool kids call it DKR, Kaylee. So, and he was just smiling watching Georgia open up a can in the first half against Texas.
He's only one of 2 5-stars from the 2025 class that's uncommitted. What do you make of the decision to push it back all the way to December 6th? Also, I love how he wanted to confirm with you, oh wait, I can push it back 2 more days. Why do you think it is that he's taking so much time on this?
I think he just wants to have as much of a runway as possible. He wants to think about it a lot. I know, dear viewer, you're going to draw your own conclusions. It's a free country. Feel free to draw your own conclusions there, but the more time he needs, the more time it takes. I think that's what Justus feels comfortable taking. We did have that discussion live on camera where he said, hey, I heard you can go to the 6th. He said, is that true? And I said, yeah. The early signing period is now the 4th, 5th, and the 6th. And I will say this, Kaylee and I have already kind of figured out where we're going to be. The day before the SEC championship game is when the Justus Terry Marathon will have run its course.
Right, so while we sit here and wait on Justus Terry to potentially be a dog, in just a minute we're going to tell you all about the newest dog. But first, we want to remind you that here on Before the Hedges, we are brought to you by Kroger, and Kroger has all of your easy wins for game day. Score snacks, sweets, and more for your tailgates and your watch parties, and make sure to visit your local Kroger or go to Kroger.com to learn more about delivery. And we're in just a few minutes, we're going to see that we no longer have the same number 1 on the top targets list, and that's because the former number 1 top target now is a dog. So electric. 5-star defensive lineman Elijah Griffin made his decision on Friday, and we had to change a lot of things on our late show graphics, and that was the most satisfying feeling in the world this morning, Jeffrey.
I mean, Kaylee, you don't mind, right? Number 1 defensive tackle in the country. I think Kaylee kind of looks like Steve Harvey in Family Feud. Show me that number 1 answer on the board. Because when she can move the number 1 top target off the list. Look at her. Look at that smile right there. You've got a dedicated, embedded host right here of Before the Hedges. Kaylee, there was a lot of great stuff coming out of it. Things that we can share now is Elijah Griffin made the decision at the Ole Miss game last year. That's when he knew he was going to choose Georgia. And then he told the staff this past January. He even came at Kirby and Schumann and Coach Scott with a prepared speech about why he wanted to be a dog, but he told them, hey, I'm going to go through the process. I'm going to take some trips. Don't worry, he knows where home is. And it was also pretty cool, Kaylee. One thing we can say, we might have to do a list at the end of the year. You know how there was the great Mason Short commitment spectacle. There was the great Juan Gaston commitment spectacle. I think we've got a little bit of B-roll of how Elijah Griffin also did the thing where he puts one hat on. Here we go right now. Here you see right there, that's the Miami hat. Nah. He's got a USC hat. Nah. And then everybody's like, all right, he's going to be a dog, right? It's a Savannah George. What we're talking about. He tries it on, and he's like, nope. And then everybody's like, OMG. What is he going to do now? At least he didn't fling it too far. He calls upon a family member. I believe that's his sister. You see his grandmother, Edna, and his mother right next to him at the podium. Comes in, and you got a gold box, Kaylee. What are you thinking right now watching this?
I'm thinking Pulp Fiction when they go and get the gold briefcase. That's what's going through my mind.
Yeah, that's a good trivia question for another show. I'd love to hear people talk about it over a beverage or two about what's actually in there.
What's in the suitcase?
But look at this. I know what's in this suitcase. It is a trophy piece of jewelry. It's that G hat feels right there, Savannah Christian. And then he puts that on as well. Going to be Trench Mob, going to be playing for Travion Scott. This guy is a dog. Now, you didn't have theatrics like Russian nesting dolls for Juan Gaston. You did not have Georgia on My Mind by Ray Charles playing, but I think Dog Nation is still going to look back fondly on this one.
I don't know why, but once all the hats were gone through, I just had flashbacks of like Travis Hunter commitment. Like, is he going to pull out a Jackson State hat right now?
That would have been crazy. Prime would have pulled out a Colorado hat, and we would have been like, no, Colorado is in the game. Dog Nation, that's your 5-star defensive tackle, Elijah Griffin. Now, some of the cool stuff that our reaction story, you know, we write the commitment story, and then we try to do like kind of like the stuff, the really, really good stuff. And I was talking to, now this is just a funny story. If you haven't seen this story on dognation.com, you should. I was talking to Baker Woodward, the head coach of Savannah Christian, and he was talking to me about what it was like having the coaches come through Savannah Christian. And he said basically everybody saw him as a freshman, and they all offered him as a freshman. And then he said, one SEC coach, now we can't share the name even though we do know the name. One SEC coach said, this was like 2 years ago, they said, Coach, we don't have anybody that looks like that now on our defensive line room. We don't have anybody that looks like that. And he's like, come on, man, you're in the SEC. And he's like, no. And this was Elijah like a year or two ago. And then the other story he shared is like, you know, when the coaches first see Elijah, they come in on their visits, they maybe spy him walking through the halls, and it's a miracle how many times that these coaches see these kids walking through the halls or in the weight room or whatever. And this is a part where I got to remind folks that Savannah Christian is a parochial school. It is a Christian school. And these coaches are using 4-letter words. They're using swear words when they first see him. They're using things that a grandma would take the whole bar of soap and wash it out your mouth with, that good ivory soap. And he's like, Coach, you can't say that here. No, Coach, we don't do that here. Earmuffs, Coach, earmuffs. And it was like the natural reaction from coaches who see dudes each and every year, the best dudes in the country. When they saw Elijah, they just had a brain malfunction. The filter went filter off when they saw Elijah Griffin walking through the halls.
All right, so to sum all of this up, what kind of athlete is Georgia getting out of Elijah Griffin?
I think they're getting a guy that can probably play 2 deep pretty quickly in his freshman year. First down, second down especially. Kaylee, you know, those coaches, they might have not been able to keep it Sunday school, but they're right. You don't see bodies like this. I mean, Elijah has all the offers in the world for a reason, and when you saw him at Georgia for his official visit for the Mississippi State game, ma'am, you saw all over the place. You looked at Georgia's current guys, and you looked at Elijah, and you're like, man, that guy is coming strapped. You compare what he looked like to the dogs that came through the dog walk. And I mean strapped, I mean just barrel-chested, ready to play. He works out all the time at Savannah Christian, everything they ask him to do. And then he goes and finds his own trainer and works out on the side 2 times, 3 times a day. He was an AJC Super 11, and as we stated earlier in the show, Kaylee kind of cackled and was quite glad to see Justus Terry going from #1 on the top targets list to #1 perhaps in the defensive line room.
So in doing this show with you, covering high school football, if there's anything that I've learned, it's that the football gods giveth and they also taketh away. The football gods gave Georgia Elijah Griffin, but they also had to taketh away. And that's what happened with the 5-star quarterback coming out of the 2026 class. Jared Curtis released a statement on Thursday that he was going to decommit, not like some of the other guys we've seen where they're still committed but are reopening their recruitment. He comes out flat, is decommitting, then releases a list of schools that have surprised him or he's interested in. Is this kind of a shocking decision, or did you maybe have some Sentell's intel on this beforehand that kind of just like trickled? What was your knowledge on this?
Well, I still feel, let me just tell you how I feel. I still feel that Georgia is his #1 school right now. And I feel like if signing day was tomorrow, he would probably still choose Georgia. He loves Georgia. This is what I got it real close to the situation, Kaylee, is he just doesn't feel right being committed to Georgia and visiting other schools. And he wants to visit other schools. Now, I know that's the kind of the hallmark way of describing this commitment, or this decommitment, but that's kind of how it's been portrayed to me. Is, yeah, of course, he's going to reopen his recruitment. That way he doesn't have to call Georgia, call Bobo, call Kirby, call Gummy, and be like, hey, I'm going to let you know I'm going here. I'm going to let you know I'm going here. He just wants to enjoy the recruiting process a little bit more. Remember, he committed back in March of his sophomore year before he was a junior this fall. And he's going to go see a lot of schools. I think he's going to go see places like Vanderbilt. He wants to go see Alabama. He wants to see Oregon. Oregon's a big school now here, Ohio State, other schools like that. And, you know, I'm just going to take him at his word. Of course, when he reevaluates and he reopens things up, of course, that will be another chance for him to hear offers from collectives and hear offers from other schools as well. But what I've been told is right now, and a lot can change between now and then, Kaylee, what I've been told is to look for Georgia to still be perhaps the team to beat here going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we've seen, especially in this postmodern NIL era, is that just because a kid decommits or commits somewhere else doesn't mean that the school stopped recruiting. Georgia still hasn't stopped recruiting C.J. Wiley. Even after Justus Terry decommitted and committed to another school, they're still recruiting him hard as ever. With Jared Curtis being a quarterback, it makes sense that he would want to make a decision early on. But I think if what you say is genuine, then that makes sense for him to want to have those experiences and go visit other places. However, I do think we have to ask the question that now that he's decommitted, who else does Georgia look at for a quarterback in the 2026 class?
Yeah, it's really intriguing here, Kaylee, because, like, listen, here's what it is. If you're looking, we're looking. And Georgia really, I'll be honest, according to my information, they really like Faison Brandon probably just as much as Jared Curtis. Those are the two 5-stars in the 2026 class. And it just so happened that, you know, Georgia had offered Faison, and he's currently the #1 quarterback in the country for a lot of folks. If it's not Jared, it's Faison. And then since Georgia was off the board, Faison went through his process also this summer and late summer, and he chose Tennessee. So I think Georgia now is going to try to reopen those pipelines, and he's going to be like, Georgia's going to start talking to Faison again, because the reason they took Jared is because Jared was really ready to commit. That's what you kind of have to do with that high-stakes quarterback stuff.
Yeah.
If you've got two guys that you really like and one of them's ready to commit, you're going to take the one that's ready to commit and be happy with one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I think that's what Georgia did. And now you look at Jared, who's going to – and one thing to remember, guys, and to reinforce the point, he's going to go visit Georgia for the Tennessee game. That was a visit that was on the books while he was a commit, and that's a visit he's still going to come back and take. So I think Georgia quarterback gets really interesting now because of the Ryan Montgomery injury. He's probably not – he's not going to be ready for spring practice this spring. And consequently, Georgia just offered a quarterback out of Hawaii last night, Kaylee, currently committed to Cal, big arm. He's a left-hander. Look how cool, you watch the film. Anytime a lefty's spinning it, it just looks real nice. It's kind of like baseball, kind of like a golf swing. So Georgia, look for them to possibly think about flipping a Cal commit to come into the class as well. Like, the guy's not on the top targets list or anything because he hasn't visited yet. He's committed to another school, but I think it makes quarterback a lot more interesting moving forward for Georgia. And hey, if they don't wind up with Curtis, maybe they start shooting both barrels for the Tennessee commit Faison Brandon. Of course, we know Tennessee will be very heavy in the NIL for a guy like that. They already are, but I think it just makes quarterback a lot more intriguing. And, Kaylee, I think a fun way to sum this up is sometimes you bring up the term girl math to me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is Georgia recruiting math. Georgia, if you subtract a 5-star quarterback and you add a 5-star defensive lineman, isn't that what we're all about here at the University of Georgia anyway?
Is it Newton's third law that says every action has an equal opposite reaction?
Correct.
I did find the timing just a little bit coincidental that Georgia loses someone on Thursday, but then, there's bigger news on Friday that takes away from what happened on Thursday. So, yeah, I like that. Some Georgia recruiting math.
You know how people say that the Kang, Kirby Smart, always has a great reaction to bad news? Well, Kirby didn't have to do it this time because Elijah Griffin was planned for the day after. I bet that was pretty interesting. Kirby takes the call that Thursday from Jared and his people, and they're like, all right, hey, still love you, still come visit, go see everybody. If you do eventually come back to Georgia, we want you to be sure in your commitment that we were the best option for you. But he's like, yep, don't have to worry about good news tomorrow. I got good news coming down the train tomorrow.
So even though we replaced Jared Curtis's Dog of the Week from last week with Usman Chroma, we actually still have a Dog of the Week for this week. Let's do some Mansell's details here on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. Let's start with Poe Walker, the running back commit. A lot of running back love in this Mansell's details today. Bo Walker had 18 carries for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns in a win over Prominence Day where, oh yeah, by the way, David Sanders is committed.
Yeah, the 5-star that Georgia wanted at tackle. They actually, Kaylee, these two teams, they go back and forth every year for the North Carolina Independent Schools State Championship, and they were so worried. They're always so worried when they play Raven Gap that they had David Sanders playing defense on the defensive line, and Raven Gap and that team right there, they definitely ate last Friday night against a Providence Day team that had won the last 3 state titles in their classification.
Wow. Well, let's keep the running back love going. Usman Cromer, our dog of the week from last week, still gets on the board today. 7 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown in a 57-10 win. Oh, and by the way, Jeff, he also had 96 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns last Friday.
You see this clip right here, and they had their way with veterans last week, no doubt about that. They won by 47, but this is a play right here where Usman started off in the backfield, and then they flanked him out wide. He basically just ran a 9 route. He ran a deep route, threw it up for him, and the running back goes and makes the play on football.
I think it was in his Super 11 interview that they talked about, or he said something along the lines of he couldn't be a receiver because he wasn't great at catching the ball, which is why he had to be a running back. Well, I don't see that in this play right here.
Yeah, he's a guy that, he's worked on that, and he's learned, and Coach Fabrizio even confirmed it to me. He knows every position at wide receiver in the Lee County offense. He can play the Z, he can play the slot. Great googly moogly. If you ever see Usmani Croma showing up in the slot, you got to deal with that guy coming across the middle. Have fun, Mr. Safety. Have fun, Mr. Nickel Corner. But Usman, again, he's just kind of rolling right now. Lee County's playing as well as anybody in the state in that classification. I can't wait to see what happens when Lee County might meet up with a Milton right there. Another fantastic week for Usman Croma.
Well, speaking of fantastic weeks, this next player we've got 3 plays for. It's going to be the 4-star wide receiver, Talon Taylor, who has very limited possessions for his team, but always makes the most of him. Every time I see his stats, that's what I get out of that. He's not a guy that's getting 10 receptions, 11 receptions a game, but every time the ball is put in his hands, it seems like it's always in the end zone. Yeah,
you don't need a lot of 10, 12 possessions when you just get it to Talon. He's averaging 26.4 yards per catch this year, Kaylee, and it just gets better and better with these highlights.
All right, we've got another Talon Taylor highlight for you. I think after the Alabama game, everybody was kind of waiting on, like, who's going to be that next wide receiver? Who's going to be that next wide receiver? And you're very adamant that Talon Taylor could be that guy.
I think he is that guy, Kaylee. I'll just make sure I just stand on 10 toes right here. I think Talon Taylor is going to be that guy for Georgia. I think with a turnover wide receiver and his playmaking ability, he can play right away, even though he will be 18 years old and not 17 years old. Kaylee,
then cut him loose.
Kaylee, I've got a mega amazing Before the Hedges 99-mile-an-hour fastball stat for you right now. I think Talon Taylor has 36 catches this year, and he has 18 touchdowns on those 36 catches. That's like Shohei-type baseball math right here with the batting average. He has 36 catches, and he's caught touchdowns on 18 of those 36 catches. So his home run ratio, we're going to call it, Kaylee, is 50%. 50% of every ball he touches turns into 6 points for Geneva.
Well, look, we've got a completely different thing for you here. In addition to the touchdowns that he had in Friday night's game, he's also going to run this ball back 94 yards for a return and a touchdown. He was moving so quick, the camera person could hardly keep up with him.
Kaylee, what's impressive to me about this run is he takes this kick and he weaves all the way basically across the entire course of the field and outruns a lot of angles. And you start looking at his film, and he put out his 1-8 game film this week with all those stats and all those great plays, Kaylee. And he looks like a lot of guys. He looks like maybe a Chris Olave. He looks kind of like people have likened him to like maybe a cross between like a Jermaine Burton and an Arian Smith type. Like Georgia doesn't, the way he gets separation and the way he gets off the ball, and he's like slippery quick. He looks like this bag of goods here, Dog Nation. The rankings say this will be the highest rated receiver since 2020 that Georgia will sign, and he is a very committed dog right here. Mom's on board, family's on board. He's always loved Georgia. But my evaluation and my perception of him is you've got to go back to Pickens to find a more talented overall receiver. Because remember, Arian Smith was a project. Jermaine Burton also had great ball skills, but he didn't have this wiggle and this burst. And, Marcus Rosamie-Jack Saint was more of a red zone specialist. He didn't have this type of speed. He didn't have this type of stats because he was playing at one of the best schools in the state of Florida. But there's no disrespect to all those young men I just mentioned. This is a very rare football player talent here.
All right, when you have that rare football player type talent, you, Talon Taylor, get to be our dog of the week.
I'm a big dog, no leash. You are part, no teeth. That's a whole lot of wins on me. That's a whole lot of wins on me.
We tried not to give away too much. Talon Taylor, our dog of the week, had 3 receptions for 113 yards, a 94-yard return, 4 touchdowns, and a 49-14 win.
Excellent stuff. Again, we mentioned all the touchdown catches. We mentioned all the big plays, but then you've got him right here adding the 94-yard kickoff return in a big win. Geneva, Illinois is obviously undefeated. That's a suburb of Chicago. His mother was a professional softball player, now a current D2 softball coach. Coached right. Mom teaches him work ethic, teaches him work harder than the other guy, teaches him don't give up. And listen, this is a guy that's going to add a lot more TNT to the UGA offense.
Yeah, and we're in the running now for our dog of the month. Talon Taylor is going to be somebody that we certainly have our eye on. So Talon Taylor, we give you your flowers. We give you, I would give you the water bottle that's sitting in the corner over there, but I can't reach it. But Talon Taylor, you are our dog of the week. Now let's move on and do something else. Let's do our question of the week, Jeff. I like the question of the week this week. Dog Nation, let us know in the comments, whether you're on Facebook, dognation.com, YouTube, whatever you watch us on. Please let us know in the comments. The question of the week is, which 2024 freshman do you think has the brightest future at Georgia? Jeff?
This is a great one.
I like it.
I'll tell you, my answer just got a lot tougher.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you guys have been watching the show. Whenever I talk about the 2024 class, I'm going to mention Ellis Robinson first because I think he just has the rarest set of work ethic, intangibles, ability, skill, and all that. But Miss Kaylee Mansell,
oh yeah,
I saw Chris Cole.
I was going to say Chris Cole.
Sorry, I stole your answer. But I saw Chris Cole, and well, first of all, watching him work out before the game. There's some video on my Twitter timeline, my X timeline of him and Justin Williams working out, and he looks like a creative player on NCAA football. He looks like exactly what Georgia would want. But listen, I knew that. I knew he could play safety. I knew he was long. I knew he was fast. He's getting some pass rush reps. But Kaylee Mansell, Miss Kaylee Mansell, if you saw last week when targeting took away Dirty Dan Jackson and targeting took away Jonel Aguero, well, in those late snaps against Texas, Chris Cole was in there, and he wasn't rushing the passer. He was covering dudes. And that play where he went go gadget, and he almost snagged that ball with one arm. And it might be one of the best plays. It's still a play because he broke up the pass. But how he went Luke Skywalker and used the force and went and found that football was amazing. And if he would have made that play, I think Dog Nation would have lost it. Maybe Dog Nation would have been throwing some things up in the air. They're so excited, but maybe not throwing things on the field. But Cole, to me, and we've talked about him, Kaylee, last year, never made a B in high school, wants to be Dr. Cole when all this stuff is done. And he can do stuff like that. If you're watching the game, you know that part I'm telling you about. When Chris Cole used those go gadget arms and found that football, very impressive. So what I'm saying right there is that's a good problem for Georgia to have, where now the lines are blurred, whether your best freshman future looks like Ellis Robinson, or maybe now coming charging hard is Chris Cole.
Or you can't forget about KJ Bolden, Nate Frazier, so many guys out of this class. But Dog Nation, let us know what you think in the comments. What 2024 commit will have the best season as a Dog? We have some things that we got to switch up this week, and we finally get to show you. Let's do our class breakdown. No changes on the offense. If you're new with us. Then if their name is in yellow, that means they're still committed, but their recruitment has been reopened. That's the case for the 4-star wide receiver, Thomas Blackshear. All right, I just want to get to it. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball. It's got a new name on it. It's going to be the 5-star defensive lineman, Elijah Griffin. And on top of getting to add his name to that list right there, we also get to add a 3rd 5-star for the Georgia defense.
Now, Kaylee, I was interested because I know you like to have a little fun with your graphics and your dashboards and everything. I was wondering, with all your tools, whether you would have just made Elijah Griffin really massive because you were happy, or you were just like, you know, fireworks around it or something like that. But
you wouldn't even need that. His name stands out among the rest. He's a 5-star defensive lineman, Jeff.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it is. There's your 5-star on the defensive line, Kaylee. You're going to have to find a lot more room in that DL spot. You're going to have to do some, maybe shrink down that linebacker a little bit, shrink down some of those other stuff.
That's fine.
Miss Kaylee, you're gonna need to throw about 6 or 7 names in that DL spot by the time everything's said and done.
All I know is I love to see it, and I know you love to see it. All right, let's look at our class snapshot. This changes everything. Elijah Griffin literally changes just about everything on here. 23 commits, but the thing to really look at is the class rank nationally. Georgia has been sitting at 5 for quite some time now, but just with the addition of Elijah Griffin, they now become number 3.
Jump over Auburn, jump over LSU, 2 schools that have been having a pretty good fall on the recruiting trail. 1 commitment did that. It adds up. It jumps up the 4 stars. It jumps up the top 50s, the top 100s. And what it does, Kaylee, and I've already done some of my calculations, you give Georgia Griffin, it's on the board. You give Georgia Terry. You give a little bit more re-ranking love for maybe a Landon Roldan, other players like that. You see a lot of prospects on Georgia's board getting re-ranked, especially a guy that's still a target right now in Chase Linton. What I'm trying to say is, if you put together Georgia's best possible class, they're only 1 point away from the number 1 spot in the country. Now, that's currently Ohio State.
Yeah.
And I don't expect Ohio State to sit on their hands. I expect they'll get more commitments and they'll get a little bit better. But it certainly makes the race for number 1 a lot more exciting now.
Well, the Dawgs go out and get the number 1 player of the state of Georgia and the number 1 defensive lineman in the entire country. Let's see who Georgia's got left on their radar. This is our top targets. Not many changes this week, just except for Elijah Griffin comes off the board.
Yeah, I've dropped Kevin Wynn a little bit because I think even though he's committed to FSU, USC is certainly weighing in with a pitch that will catch his attention. Joseph Mbachu, now this guy's very interesting. He was committed to Florida. He just decommitted over the weekend. He took his official visit to Texas over the weekend as well with one Mr. Justus Terry, and now he's open. But he did drop a list of top schools when he decommitted. And he had Texas on there. I believe he had several other schools on there, but he did not have the University of Georgia on there. So I do think Georgia is in there, but I think that shows me that Georgia's not pushing yet.
Yeah.
Georgia hasn't pushed yet for an official visit. And because Georgia's got a lot of stuff to sort out at defensive lineman. You see the Florida commitment right there, Jeremiah McLeod. I think Georgia is now a major player with him, basically because of some of the things that are hearing and happening with Kevin Wynn's universe right there. So that's what you kind of got going on the back half of our top targets.
All right, on the front half of our top targets, 3-star defensive tackle Christian Ingram. Justus Terry moves into that number 1 spot. No surprise. If you walked into a hypothetical Georgia room, they've got a list of names of everyone they want. Justus Terry is going to be number 1 on that list, just like he is our top targets.
He is, and interesting I mentioned this earlier about Chase Linton. So Chase Linton's got some re-rankings, Kaylee. And Chase Linton, according to at least one service, 24/7 Sports, is now a top 50 player in the country.
Okay.
His rankings are continuing to soar from top 200 player. That's going to keep going up the more film gets out of him. But and then also Rayshawn Jenkins. Folks forget that 3-star stuff right there. This guy is a bona fide player, currently committed to Georgia Tech. Out of Warner Robins, that's teammates with the great Isaiah Gibson, the 5-star number 1 edge rusher at Warner Robins as well.
All right, and let's take a look at our just off the list. A few changes this week. Christian Gass, the 4-star linebacker out of Tennessee, comes back on. Why?
Yeah, I just think Georgia's trying to figure out what the linebacker thing is right there. Is it A.J. Crua, who we mentioned earlier, who's going to be back? You still got a lot of names on here. Braxton Kyle. Damola Ajanan, still a Georgia Tech commitment, but now you hear a lot with him in South Carolina. Really, to me, this is just off the list. You know, it's easy to kind of figure out who the 4 or 5 targets are most wanted on Georgia's boards. But again, these boards, I feel like I have to say it every once in a while. This is not purely the best players, and this is not purely the guys that I think are most likely to choose Georgia from what I'm hearing. It's a combination of need, plus love, plus potential impact. It's kind of the gumbo of all those things right there.
All right, we've got one more page of just off the list for you. So Eric Winters comes off top targets and goes on to just off the list. Why is that?
Yeah, that's just interesting. You don't hear enough of a bounce and enough juice off of his visit from the Georgia game that he went and saw Georgia for when Georgia was playing Auburn. And you want to look at it and say, well, he's giving Georgia another look, but he may just wanting to go see Auburn and how far his program, his future team has to go to play with the big boys, and it still looks pretty far right there. Again, these are a lot of names. Mikell is a defensive tackle that I think is going up a little bit in my book. Turbo Rogers, that's a guy that's going to visit Ohio State. His decision, even though he's committed to Alabama, is going to come down to Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama as well.
All right, so let's end it this way. Just like the beginning of this show, I don't know where you want to go with this, but give us your Sentelligence for this week.
Ooh. I just say, well, first of all, Dog Bowl. Put your eyes on it. Coach Rick, that's a great partnership we have with Dog Nation. Coach Rick, what he's done with, you know, raising money in the name of Alzheimer's and Crohn's is just amazing. The partnership, the fact that you've got the Georgia football team and Kirby Smart playing such a big part in that, that's awesome. I mean, this is really kind of a catch your breath week a little bit for Georgia faithful everywhere. I mean, I know people have had weddings. I know everybody's gearing up for Georgia, Florida, St. Simons, Jekyll Island, Sea Island, Ponte Vedra, all around that area next week. But this is just kind of simple, Kaylee. Duck when the water bottles come your way in life. That's what my Sentelligence is right there, because I was actually in that end zone as well when everything started flying. And you know, your instinct is to, you know, keep your camera rolling, but also kind of post up to the wall, because surely the
not Cody Chafin.
Sure. Well, Cody's got basically a T-Rex camera out there that's just begging to get hit. But hashtag justice for Cody, justice for Cody. Because if you saw our colleague Connor Riley make such a great case for him, Liam Neeson style, on Dog Nation Daily earlier this week. I'm just glad my man came away scot-free. But you know, he has attachments and everything, and viewfinders and everything on that. And apparently some Texas fans didn't really have the best arm to kind of launch that thing on Saturday.
Why am I not surprised by that? All right, that's this week's Intelligence. This is this week's episode of Before the Hedges. Make sure to tune back in with us next week at 8 o'clock for all things Georgia, Florida. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. We start at 7 o'clock. All right, bye, y'all. Have a good weekend.
I love the family atmosphere and the way they handle business. Education is important, trying to reach the next level.